Welcome to the Startup Show. I'm your host, John Biggs. In every episode of the Startup Show, we talk to an amazing entrepreneur about how they do what they do. We'll explore tactics, tricks, and techniques for building some of the coolest things on the planet. Thanks for listening and enjoy. Welcome back to the Startup Show. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show, we have Tim Hunsinger from XOTO. Tim is building a very cool scooter. I see something peeking out from behind you, Tim. So welcome.
That is it.
Yeah.
There.
All right. So I think this is a first. I think this is the first time that anybody has done a full bore, physical reveal of a product just by moving their body on the show. So that's pretty impressive. So tell us what you're working on.
Yeah, so we're building a self-stabilizing electric scooter. The idea behind this scooter is trying to figure out how to make motorcycle riding more safe and more fun at the same time, so that more people can enjoy the joys of riding.
So it's a scooter the size like a Vespa, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so that's one of the interesting things about everybody. When you say scooter now, they think like a kick scooter, like a bird or a lion scooter. This is a true scooter. So like a Vespa or a motorcycle. So it's full size. It's capable of doing 45 miles an hour. It can do 90 miles of range, but you can also carry stuff, right? So it's better than an e-bike or a motorcycle in the sense that you can actually carry things. And anytime you're going somewhere, you're going to either pick stuff up or drop stuff off. So carrying stuff's important.
Now, is it? So this has become an issue in New York. For something like that, that's hard to ride on the bridges, for example, because it's technically a small enough to be a bike lane legal thing, but it's also fairly high powered. I mean, 45 miles an hour is nothing to joke at. Uh, so what's the status, I suppose, in terms of rideability?
Yeah, so our goal is to take all of the guesswork out of riding, right? So these bikes that are Sur-Ron style bikes that, they can go car speeds, but they're not strictly legal for roads anywhere. That's not what we're doing. This is a DOT approved vehicle that is legal to use on any roads anywhere in the United States except the freeway, right? So
Okay.
it's limited at 45 specifically to keep it off of the freeway. But that means, you're not riding on the sidewalks. You're not trying to figure out how to ride between cars. 45 miles an hour is actually fast enough that you can keep up with traffic. You don't have the jerk behind you honking at you because you're, blocking a lane of traffic going 20 miles an hour. You can keep up with traffic and you can do it really, really well. And so the idea is that instead of trying to figure out how to make an e-bike that can blend in with traffic, we've just made a vehicle that it's all DOT approved. So it's got brakes and turn signals and rearview mirrors, all the things that you actually want when you're engaging with other cars on the road to make it safer. Whereas, from an e-bike standpoint, they've got a long way to go to try to make that safe to integrate with cars.
Yeah, that was what did I ride? I rode there's a company in Barcelona. I forget what it's called, but it's basically just like a Vespa. You're riding an electric Vespa, and I suppose that's the same experience. But since it's self stabilizing, you have two wheels in the back, and I'm not going to tip over and have to worry about putting my foot down or anything, right?
Yeah, the big differentiator for us is two things. One is the self-stabilization, but then also front wheel drive. So, there aren't any other front wheel drive motorcycles in the world. And it's because of the difficulty of putting power to the wheels, right? And it's always been very difficult to get it down a steering wheel down to the road. Because of hub motors and advances in technology, that's really easy to do nowadays. And I feel like that's going to be the future of all motorcycling, because you have so much more control because you can actually point your power where you want to go. Whereas with the traditional motorcycle, you have to worry about how much power you're giving in a turn, because you can actually steer with that rear tire unintentionally and get yourself in trouble, right? So being able to actually steer that power gives you a huge advantage in control and stability on the road, like front wheel drive cars. That's why all cars are front wheel drive almost.
Okay. So I think the biggest question is why this, why now? I mean, there's obviously, as you said, there's everything from powered scooters to e-bikes to electric style Vespa style scooters. Why have you decided to pull this together?
Well, so right now batteries are finally getting to a place where the range makes sense, right? For a nickel, you can charge this battery and you can go 90 miles. So
Mm-hmm.
that that makes so much more sense than jumping in a giant SUV, even if the giant SUV is electric, right? If you're just going a short distance, you don't need all that extra space just to take you safely somewhere. And so, right now, being able to actually make a vehicle that makes sense economically, but also is really fun to use and easy to use, is why now, right? Before, a front wheel drive scooter and a self stabilizing scooter didn't couldn't have existed, not in an
Right.
affordable way. Our price point is 7,400, which in that's as much as like a folding e-bike, but you can still get 90 miles of range out of it. So, in my opinion, now it's time for people to think about how they're getting around, and that there are other options other than the giant SUV that we've all been using.
Mhm.
For some trips, a smaller vehicle makes a lot more sense, specifically if parking is an issue. In most urban environments, that is one of the major costs of car ownership, is trying to figure out where to park the thing.
How do you sell this to how do you sell this to quote unquote the heartland where basically it's a bunch of maybe some suburban sprawl, then a little bit of a core, and then a couple rings around the city. If you can't hit the highway, how do you sell a $7,400 vehicle to somebody out there?
I mean, that's a good question. The vehicle doesn't make sense in every scenario, right? There are certain places where a pickup truck is the thing that makes sense. Like that is the right size vehicle for that trip, depending on where you are and what you're doing. But in environments like, so I recently went to South by Southwest with a few of my partners with the vehicle. And, that's a city that's not as dense as LA. It's not as spread out as LA, but it's perfect for scooter riding. Like that is the place where this thing shines. It's able to keep up with all the other traffic, and you don't need to get on the interstate to get out of town. In LA and New York and San Francisco, it makes a lot more sense, because on the freeways, depending on what time of day you're going, you're not going 45.
Hmm.
And going on the surface streets is actually way faster than trying to go on the interstate anyway, because of lane splitting, etc. Um, but yeah, I mean, there are certain environments where this doesn't make sense yet, and that's not our target right now. So right now, our targets are, specifically, we're running a pilot right now in Maui. The top speed on the island is 35 miles an hour, and so we're capable of keeping up with all the cars, and that is a much better experience riding around the island, going to the beaches, than it is doing in a car. Right, in a car, you don't smell all the beautiful smells, and it's just not as joyful experience. Oahu's similar. As we move into other countries like Vietnam, etc., that's where this kind of vehicle actually makes sense. And also, as our right now, we're selling a premium product to the U.S. And as we expand outward, we should be able to actually get volumes that allow us to do high volume manufacturing prices. We are currently such a small company, that's the price that we have to make to be able to sell the vehicle.
Interesting. What was the challenge building this thing? Obviously, this is hardware. A lot of investors don't like to invest in hardware. How did you get this thing to put together?
Well, there's a lot of risk in hardware, right? Like, there's a chance that the thing just doesn't work, right? And there's a chance that people don't like it. And so, when we started working on this, our first goal was, well, let's figure out if we can make it work first, right? And so, building the vehicle and actually getting it tuned properly so that it actually will hold you up, but still makes the ride enjoyable, is kind of a hard thing to do. Many major manufacturers have tried to make a vehicle that's similar to this, and failed because the ride is terrible. It drives more like a golf cart and less like a motorcycle. And as a motorcyclist, I've been riding for 32 years. I wanted to still have the joy of riding, right? So this primarily had to be enjoyable to ride, as well as being safe. And part of that is because it countersteers like a motorcycle, et cetera. And I can get into the details of that. But so that was probably the first hurdle, was making sure that it actually worked with a small team. We only are a team of 5. And then it was like, how do we get this thing DOT approved? How do we actually get this so that it's legal to drive it on the roads? Then how do we get it insured? How do we get liability insurance for the company, but also how do our customers actually insure this with their insurance companies? And so there's been a number of hurdles along the way that we've had to go through. And then how do we manufacture this in volume? We currently have 80 vehicles in the country. How do we actually make that at a price point that actually makes sense? So these were all like big risks that we took initially to try to de-risk the entire project, and I think it's panned out. Like if we had waited until, so many startups, they'll ask for $6 million. They've never made anything except a PowerPoint deck, and I feel like that's a really hard sell for most investors. Yeah, I don't want to invest in your hardware company because you don't know anything about hardware. Yeah, that's an obvious thing. But I've been making electric vehicles for 30 years, and you can make a whole lot really early that will de-risk the whole project and make it a much better investment. And that's what we try to do.
All right, very cool. What's the rollout plan? You said you have 80 units in the country. How do you get that to, I don't know, someplace where it suddenly becomes profitable?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so because we've kept our overhead pretty low, it's actually not a super high bar to be profitable. But we expect that we should be able to sell about 500 vehicles in the United States every year. As we move into other markets where it's more favorable for scooters. Right now, I feel like I'm trying to sell scooters to people that don't understand the benefit or joy of a scooter. Whereas in Europe and Asia, that's the primary form of transportation. Like two-wheel vehicles are the way people get around, and this technology can drastically improve safety and quality of life for billions of people. Honestly, there's a billion people on two-wheelers right now, and as we move into those markets, I think we'll do really well. It's just a matter of getting to a place where our company's big enough to actually move into those markets and survive, I guess.
Yeah, interesting. What are you doing about copycats? Is there a chance of, I don't know, you send the plans over to Shenzhen or something, and then all of a sudden you got YOTOs coming out?
Yeah, right. Well, so I mean, the first thing that we did is it is patented. The front and rear suspension is patented. But then secondarily, specifically for that example, we've done all of our manufacturing in Arizona. So we are purchasing parts from various manufacturers around the world, but the parts that are IP protected are manufactured by us in
Interesting.
Arizona, and that makes it a lot easier to make sure it doesn't get out. I mean, in the end, the best thing to protect innovation is to continue innovating and continue developing, and so we've continued to do that as well. But it also makes sense to just not hand over the plans to somebody else.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I've just heard too many horror stories with doing this, like anything from, like, I don't know, sex toys to vapes to just like basic like wallets and things. Like the Ridge wallet, for example. I think that was pretty quickly faked and ruined. I mean, but I guess they're still going strong.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough problem. Assume at some point there will be knockoffs, but yeah, we're continuing to innovate. There are developments as we got to this. We found that there's a whole bunch of other things that can continue to make the vehicle better, and yeah, we'll keep doing that.
You've been doing this for 30 years. So what about this product makes you feel that something is different?
Yeah, well, so I was making other people's vehicles,
Hmm.
and honestly, there's making vehicles is hard, and there's a huge complexity in trying to make something that works, but then also starting with a real human need. And I feel like starting this human need was how do we give somebody the joy of riding without all of the hazards of riding. And I feel like that is kind of a human need, like at least it is in my life, right? I've been riding for long enough that like it's tough to not have a motorcycle. And so being out in the air and like seeing people, being able to talk to people, it's a different experience than being closed up in your car. And I feel like our cities would be happier, kinder places if more people were interacting face to face. And if that's face to face on a motorcycle, I mean, that's at least one step.
Well, you're not in my next door because everybody in this neighborhood hates the bike lanes because it takes away parking, I guess, and it's dangerous because people in the bike lanes might hit them, which I suspect might be I think the cars might be a bigger concern, but I think there's a little bit of bias there.
Bike lanes are integrating bicycles and even e-bikes into traffic is a difficulty, right? I feel like I enjoy biking and I enjoy riding. I don't enjoy riding with cars, and
Hmm.
I think that that's true of a lot of people. And but mostly why I don't enjoy riding with cars is they have just a different pace, right? And trying to drive 5 to 10 miles or 20 miles an hour in a car is really slow, or it feels really slow. Doing that same speed on any other vehicle, I think feels different. And so our vehicle fits pretty squarely between a motorcycle and a bicycle in the sense that you don't need a motorcycle license to ride it, but also in the sense that its size is such that I think it integrates with people better and it integrates with bicycles better,
Hmm.
but then still has the speed and capability and hardware necessary to make it integrate with cars in an efficient way. So I feel like it's sort of like it's a step in the right direction.
Okay. All right, very cool. When can we expect to see some of these in stores, or how can people pick one up?
Currently, you can purchase them on our website, xotoinc.com, and they take about 6 weeks for delivery. You can order extra batteries, you can order carrying cases, you can order all the things necessary to make this thing, easy to use. It's got removable batteries, so you can buy extra batteries, you can buy extra chargers, etc.
All right,
Yeah,
very
so
cool.
they're available now.
All right, so XOTO.com. All right, I'll have everybody check it out.
xotoinc.com.
XOTOinc.com. All right, perfect. All right, well, Tim, this has been really cool. So again, this is the first physical body movement reveal that we've done. So that's pretty. You can be proud of yourself.
Thanks.
All right.
Good talking with you, John.
Yeah, this has been the Startup Show. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next episode.